Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast for a big debrief of Birmingham City's pulsating FA Cup tie against Leeds United on Sunday. Blues unfortunate to lose out 4-2 on penalties after the game had ended 1-1 and we'd gone through all 120 minutes at St Andrews. I'm joined by Brian Dick as ever to discuss that. And Brian, should we get straight into it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think I came away yesterday actually feeling more positive than negative, even though they've been knocked out of the cup, didn't you?
Yeah, it was very much like Newcastle last season, wasn't it, really, where they've lost a game in the fourth round of the FA Cup, but kind of, everything that is good about Birmingham City on and off the field at the moment was on full display.
Yeah, absolutely. I was genuinely worried before kick-off about a Pek Seung-ho-less Birmingham City midfield, because we haven't seen that too many times. So I took to transfer market to see how Blues have fared without Peck, and it turns out they tend to win without him, but obviously most of that was in League One anyway, and I think the one he's missed this season was Norwich, wasn't it? And they absolutely hammered Norwich. Those statistics and what we saw, as you say, for 2 hours on Sunday didn't bear that out. They coped really well, and we'll come on to the Jhon Solis and Tommy Doyle dynamic shortly, won't we? But overall, I think the first impression as I walked into St Andrews press room yesterday, there was over 100 media there. It was a tie that really caught the encounter. There was a bun fight for the food, and
where were they in League One?
Exactly, yeah, indeed. So it was. It felt like a big occasion, and I think it delivered, I have to say. It was a very enjoyable day.
Yeah, it did. I thought Blues were really good. Again, from kind of the first minute, a little bit like Newcastle last year, they started really quickly and got right in Leeds United's faces. Had probably the only good chances of the game in the first half when you think back to the Doyle corner for Solis at the back post, where he probably should have directed it on target. Stansfield's forced a fantastic save from Perry as well. Blues got in some really good positions. I actually felt like in the first half, the really simple Ryan Allsop kind of long lump into the Leeds penalty area towards Prriska and Clara was causing Leeds all kinds of issues. They obviously didn't have Struijk or Joe Roden at centre-back, did they? And those are the two players who normally want to head the ball. And Blues took advantage and they kind of won a lot of knockdowns and second balls in those areas. And I think the Stansfield chance might have come from one of them. So I was really impressed with Blues first half. Leeds obviously made a tweak at half-time, bringing on Ampadu to go to a 4-3-3 rather than a 4-2-3-1, which I think really helped them, gave them a little bit more of a foothold in midfield, although I thought Blues are probably still largely, apart from I say largely the better team. I think it was more of an even contest in the second half. It felt quite end-to-end at times, particularly towards the end as both teams went for it. And Blues obviously got their equaliser. And even in stoppage time, there were two really good chances, one for Leeds, one for Blues. So it was just a really, really good game of football and a game where you always hope Blues playing against a Premier League team can play up to that level. And I think a lot of their players did. Yeah,
I think they did. Looking at the course of the two games, the West Brom game, which we'll maybe touch on in terms of what it means for the league a bit later, but the two home games in the space of 5 days, it doesn't feel like much has dropped for Blues in the penalty area. They've hit the woodwork quite a few times, twice yesterday again. They've created a lot of opportunities. And to have only scored one goal from those two games feels a little bit, you feel a bit shortchanged, don't you? I thought Blues went absolutely toe-to-toe. And even when the subs came on, the sort of the rhythm and the cohesion of the side wasn't particularly broken up. And you are right in what you say about Leeds fortifying their midfield at half-time. But even then, Ibrahim Osman got in behind James Justin several times, didn't he? And, and maybe we'll come on to Osman and his travails in front of goal. But I absolutely. Blues gave absolutely as good as they got, and I think they deserve to win it. Penalty shootout's just a lottery, and people can say that Premier League players tend to be better than Championship players in penalty shootouts, and maybe that's true. But 11 on 11, it was excellent stuff. What did you make of the team selection? Were you any surprises there for you?
Not massively. I think we thought he could make 4 or 5 changes. We weren't sure whether Allsop would come back in goal for Beadle, and obviously he did. Awata missing out, or maybe rested with an injury because he's managing some niggles at the moment, allowed Asai Sam to start to get it right back. That was one I think Awata, if he's fit, would start. The rest, I wasn't surprised by. I thought Prriska would get a game with Stansfield up front. I thought Damari Gray would start. I didn't think he finished the game based on the fact that it was his first start in 2 months. I thought Vicente would come in for Roberts for the extra intensity and speed out wide. Who else? Panzo. And Panzo, it was logical to give him his debut, wasn't it? If he's fit enough and he's been playing football for Rio Ave in Portugal, which he has, then, it was logical to give him his debut. And I thought he did quite well, which, again, we're probably going to come on to later. So I was quite happy with the team selection. I felt that the way that Blues played showed us that they've got real depth now in a lot of positions. They've got probably 16, 17, 18 players who you could trust to start in a championship game, and the level shouldn't drop too much, particularly in forward areas. I really like the attacking quartet in that first half. I thought they caused Leeds, what was quite a strong Leeds defence, really. At least 3 players there in Justin, Biol and Goodmanson, who I was really impressed with, the left back. They start a lot of Premier League games. So, that was a real test for that front 4 of Blues, and I thought they did really well and created maybe 3 or 4 good openings in that half. So it was encouraging, particularly as well, 3 of those, or actually even 4 if you count Gray, are all at a good age, are all going to be here for the next 2 or 3 years and develop the team. So, yeah, I was really happy with how that attack looked.
Yeah, indeed. And Dimi, had a good chance as well, didn't he? Which forced a good save in the first half that Jay didn't follow up on. I thought all the players that came in, justified their selection. And the word you used there, which I'm quite engaged by, was trust, because it's felt at times, even in League One, to a degree, really, in the bigger games in League One. Chris Davies has had, some would say favourites, but it's probably the people he trusts, isn't it? And I would say 2 or 3 players have added their name to the trust list, haven't they, in the last couple of matches? So yeah, good stuff. Should we come on to the Jhon Solis and Tommy Doyle combination? Because we were concerned about would Solis be able to play at the right pace, because it was always going to be a fairly tasty and frantic encounter against Leeds United, just because of the atmosphere from the stands. And would Tommy Doyle have the athleticism to live as well, up against Tanaka, who is a very good player. He starts plenty of games for Leeds in the Premier League, albeit not their absolute first choice, which tends to be Ampadu and Stack. And Longstaff as well, very experienced player who actually played for Newcastle in this sort of the comparative game last season, didn't he? Overall impressions pretty positive, right, from the Solis Doyle axis?
Yes, Brian. I think they did really well, the pair of them. Listeners of our last podcast will see that we had reservations over the pair of them and how they would combine, because we felt that they were trying to work in similar spaces against West Bromwich Albion. Both wanted to come deep and take the ball from the centre-backs. And you do need kind of one of them or both of them at times to be that link and carry the ball forward a little bit and play forward. And I thought they both did that to an extent against Leeds. I thought Doyle was far more progressive than he has been in terms of how he took the ball. He's always progressive in terms of turning and playing long balls or switching the play. But in terms of how he carried the ball and drove through midfield, I was quite impressed. Solis has got that. He's got that frame. He can do it. And he played really well. I suppose it's different. You might see it kind of under the microscope a little bit more in championship games, because they'll, Leeds were happy to come and play at Blues, weren't they? Blues, will face low blocks in the championship, where Doyle and Solis have got to carry the ball more and maybe play through a little bit more, and we'll see how intricate they can be, because I think that is a real strength of Peck, that he can kind of transfer the ball from defence to mid to attack quite swiftly and carry the ball. He's, there isn't a better kind of ball carrying midfielder in the Blues 11 than Peck. So I was really encouraged. I thought Tommy Doyle had his best game in a good while. In terms of how tenacious he was, even right through extra time as well. I thought he was really, really good. And Solis, has made himself a firm favourite as supporters already, and it's quite easy to see why, because he's wholehearted, a little bit silly in the time that he got booked in the first half, and he did well to carry on throughout the game with that booking. But yeah, he's a real kind of a crowd pleaser in the way that he plays and the tackles that he goes into and the way he wins the ball.
Do you want to sing his song at this point?
No.
No, okay, no. Right, okay, let's move on. If there's one gripe with Tommy Doyle, and it's really unfair, it's only a teeny weeny thing, the corners, every corner is either going for goal or picking out the man way beyond the back post, isn't it? And Leeds fell for it once because on the first corner, they let Solis get round the back and he didn't make a great contact. Little bit more variety for me now on those. We've seen it. He's nearly scored a couple. In fact, Blues have scored a couple with the deep corner, albeit not always from Doyle's delivery. Just a little bit of variety there. But we are nitpicking here. Given the concerns we had going into the game without Peck, the two combined really, really well. And, I think a little bit of competition is potentially getting a bit more out of Tommy Doyle, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he dropped out of the team for 3 games. So I think it goes without saying that he had to up his level, because I think when he came into the team, maybe October, November, he started at a really high level. Blues had some great performances, particularly at home. And then over Christmas, he did dip. He obviously got the red card against Sheffield United. And when he came back, I don't think he was as good. So maybe Solis coming in has kind of given him the kick up the backside that maybe he needed, because him and Peck probably both at points this season have been very assured of their place in that midfield. So yeah, that can only be a good thing for Blues moving forward.
Yeah, indeed. Just looking at the stats here, I'm not a massive fan of stats, but Doyle had 105 touches, with 92% pass completion. I think Solis's was over 90 as well. So they did use the ball well. And, obviously they tried to get at Leeds in wide positions rather than playing through them. So, that bears that out a little bit. But yeah, really good. Speaking of wide positions, now Demi's fit again, where are we with the Gray Osman selection? Is it a debate, or is it, are we in horses for courses territory? What do you think?
I think it's a debate on both wings, really, isn't it? I think Gray was actually very good in the first half. He got into some absolutely fantastic positions. I think on the one where he's collected Allsop's raking long ball over the top with an absolutely brilliant touch, and then he's come inside and the shot's not particularly good. I think even if Prriska hadn't have fallen over and blocked his shot inadvertently, I think the goalkeeper would have collected it. But then there was the other one where he's drifted over to the right and had a decent shot that Perry saved. He looks really, really bright, considering he'd had, 20 minutes of football in 2 months. And based on form early this season, since about October, Demarai Gray has been Blues' best attacking player. So, I think we probably presumed a couple of weeks ago that he would just walk straight back in. But Ibrahim Osman is absolutely electric, isn't he? He's just, every time he gets the ball, you think something's going to happen. He goes by players. He absolutely rinsed James Justin a few times. And at times you look at him and you're not sure how he's doing it, but maybe it is just raw speed, and almost at times he gets a little bit of luck in ricochets and how he bounced in his favour. But he's a fantastic player, a really bright prospect for Brighton. But you can see why he's in the Championship, because when he gets into that kind of final action, it's not always perfect. I was watching the highlights of the game, the extended highlights last night, and there were about 4 Osman chances in there. Yeah. There was 3, I think, in the second half, and obviously the one right at the end where he's hit the post, which is probably the best technically of the lot. And then there was the one in extra time where Stansfield's fed it across the box and he's just blazed it over. And he does that quite a lot, doesn't he? In his 4 or 5 Blues appearances, we've seen a lot of erratic finishing, but we've also seen a player who could be an absolute star for Blues in the running. So I'm torn at the moment. I think starting, if we're looking at Norwich next weekend, I think I'm going Osman. But I think gradually, maybe based on consistency, I think Gray might win the battle.
I actually have no objection to them both playing 45 minutes each, either way, to be honest with you. I know neither of them would want that. It's more likely to be 60-30, isn't it? But yeah, listen, I've fallen over Demarai Gray. I'm conscious of that. I think his end product was sensational in those last, before he picked up his injury. But Osman needs games. It's a debate. I think I would potentially go Demarai at Norwich, to be honest with you. He's they're going to need to up his game time. He's got 45 minutes in the tank now. Yeah, I think Norwich is. We're not going to talk massively about Norwich, but I think Norwich is going to be a really difficult game, and Blues' record there is horrible. I would go for the experience and more guaranteed end product. Is that fair? I think Norwich will come. Will I'm going to talk myself out of it now. I'm going to say Norwich will come at Blues, which will leave space in behind, which is where you'd probably want Osman. Yeah. I would go Dimmy for the experience, but I'm liking virtually everything I see from Osman. And off the ball, he's good as well, isn't he? It's he's very attentive to supporting Kai Wagner. It's great to have these two options. It's been a long time since we've had these. We'll chat about Vicente and Roberts as well, but just to sow a seed in your brain, I want you to have a think a little bit about, have Blues got the best four winger combination in the Championship? Let's move on before we do that.
Oh, okay, we're moving on. You planted the seed.
Let's do where we are with Roberts and Vicente in terms of their debate, and then we'll go back to that.
These two are really different, and I actually didn't think yesterday would be a game for Patrick Roberts because of the intensity and the speed of it. I feel like Roberts comes alive when the, Blues are against that low block and they've got to pick a way through, and he's so intricate and can find those passes when he drifts in from the right side. But he matched that intensity and actually probably gave Goodmanson more problems or maybe more to think about than Vicente did. I think Vicente against Goodmanson was just a race, wasn't it? It was just a battle of intensity and stamina, and they both had a decent amount of it of success. Whereas Roberts was doing something completely different. He wanted to come inside. He wanted to find pockets of space and made Goodmanson think differently. And actually, in the time that he was on the field, probably had more success than Vicente, didn't he? In that he scored a goal and was almost pulling the strings when Blues are pushing for that winner. So. I think it's going to be horses for courses with those two. They're two such different players that I'd be surprised if Vicente didn't start the majority away from home, because Blues are going to need more of a threat on the counter. They're not going to go to Norwich next week and absolutely dominate the ball, are they? There are going to be moments in that game where Norwich have a lot of the ball and Blues have to be compact in their shape and spring a counter. And Vicente's speed is obviously better for that. At home, I think Roberts will get the nod more often than not, because Blues are going to be playing low blocks again as they have all season. And Roberts, I think, there's probably not a more creative player in the Blues team than Roberts in the way that he picks passes and finds spaces. So they're great options to have. I think maybe on the left side, they're maybe a little bit more like for like with Gray and Osman. Both fast players, both cut inside onto their right foot. Like to go 1v1, whereas Vicente and Roberts are very different. Would you agree? Yeah, I do. Yeah. Best quartet in the Championship. We had this conversation last week, didn't we? A little bit, and Ipswich have got some very good wide players: Jaden Philogene, Jack Clark, Wes Burns. There'll be someone I'm missing. Who else? Hull, probably not. Coventry have got good options. Sakamoto and Ephraim Mason-Clark, and then they've got Romain Eze, haven't they, who's come on loan from Crystal Palace, and they took the young lad, is it Yang, from Tottenham? Yeah. So they've got plenty of options. Middlesbrough tends to be Morgan Whittaker, doesn't it? On one wing, I think Bergzog's gone to Bristol City now, hasn't he? So I'd take that Blues quartet above what Middlesbrough have got. They're in the conversation. If you forced me to pick, I suppose we're going Ipswich, but it's not. It's not by very much, I don't think. No, it's a really close one. It's a really close one. Blues have massively, I think, since League One. If you look at the wingers they had in League One, that was an area we felt they needed to upgrade, and with the two signings they've made in January, and Osman and Vicente, they've just massively upgraded on what they had even at the start of this season. So you can't pick two starters, really. It's gonna be a week on week thing, and we're probably going to say a lot of different things over the season. But all four have got real parts to play. Yeah, he's not down on the running order. But what did we make of August Prriska's full debut?
I was pretty impressed. I've liked what I've seen of Prriska so far.
Yeah, no, I think the first action was actually quite telling in that they played it into him. He had a defender up his backside and was quite happy to hold him off and bounce the ball back into midfield, or hold the ball and just feed it back into midfield and set Blues away for an attack. I think he dropped it to Stansfield, didn't he? Just with one touch.
Yeah.
Centre back, and there was a lot of that. He was quite happy to fight the centre backs. I think maybe the ball, as you mentioned earlier, the ball just didn't quite drop for Blues in the Leeds box. I felt like it really didn't drop for Prriska. It just didn't quite land at his feet or his head when he wanted it to. He was in plenty of positions where the ball was in close proximity, and maybe on another day it would have landed on his head or would have connected with his right boot. But in terms of his general play, I thought he was really good. Very different to Marvin Duksh. And I think, again, Prriska, when Blues play away from home a little bit and need that focal point, he is going to be their guy, isn't he? Because Stansfield's not that player. He'll say that himself, and Duksh definitely isn't that player. So 3 very good options for 2 positions there.
Yeah, indeed. Alsop, you made reference to Ryan Alsop earlier in the pod. Has he done enough to sow a seed of doubt in Chris Davies's mind?
I think a lot of the people at St Andrews yesterday would maybe like to think so. Also, I think he still has a lot of favour from League One and from winning the Golden Glove and how good he was in League One. Obviously started the season.
I think, to be fair, Alex, we have to give the Golden Glove to the whole Blues defence, don't we, from League One?
We do. I think he probably had the fewest shots to save, didn't he, actually, as well? So
yeah. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that disappointed me about Alsop's start to the season, it wasn't necessarily that he didn't save shots, and I think that has to come into this conversation, because if you look at the stats, everything points to Beadle makes more saves than Ryan Alsop. That is where he is. He is clearly, has been doing better this season, and that is probably the main reason why Chris Davies has gone with Beadle and stuck with him. The thing we wanted to see from Alsop at the start of the season was a continuation of the distribution that we saw in League One. And it was always going to be a question of, is Alsop's distribution that good that Beadle's ability with his hands isn't deemed an absolute necessity? So at the start of the season, if you look back to last season, Alsop's pings to the wide players, be it Keshi Anderson, be it Ethan Laird when he was moving up from right back, were essential parts of Blues play in the final 2 or 3 months of the season. We saw it time and time again. I think he even set up a goal for Taylor Gardner-Hickman when he was playing left wing against Wickham. And you wanted to see that carry on over to the Championship, and it just didn't. I don't think in the opening 10 games of this season, we saw much of that. Whether he just wasn't in sync with Damari Gray on the left wing, or someone else, on the right wing, be it Brightside, Samuel, Ethan Laird, or when Tomoki Iwata moved over there, I'm not sure. I don't think Patrick Roberts is ever going to be the player that collects one of those raking Alsop's long balls in behind. Vicente might. We just didn't see it. It didn't carry over. And Chris Davies made the change, went with the goalkeeper who was doing more, who is perceived to be better with his hands, and has stuck with Beadle since early October. Against Leeds, that was the first time we saw Alsop do that again. Bring those balls into the equation. He found Gray with a brilliant one. His distribution throughout was absolutely fantastic, be it long or short. I thought he played out so calmly. At times you were grabbing me on the arm thinking, has he played Blues into trouble? But he was just the calmest man inside the stadium, wasn't he? Never seems put off by a little bit of pressure from an attacking player, and just played out. I thought he was really, really good. He, on the face of it, probably should have given Chris Davies something to think about. But does a manager ever drop a goalkeeper after 3 clean sheets in 5 games for a cup game, with the intention of putting the goalkeeper back in for the next league game, and then go back on his word and say, actually, the goalkeeper who came in really impressed. I know you've been doing okay in the league, but now you're out the team. It doesn't happen, does it? So I would expect Beadle to come back in, and probably fairly so, because he didn't lose his place against Leeds for doing anything wrong. He lost it because Chris Davies wanted to play Ryan Alsop and give him a game. Alsop did exceptionally well, and I think it does create a question now again that if Beadle's level drops or Beadle's playing out doesn't improve a little, then maybe you could make the change, but I don't think it's anything that they'll do imminently.
The contrast from Beadle's distribution on Tuesday night against Albion to what Alsop was doing against a Premier League team, against Premier League fullbacks. James Justin is an experienced Premier League fullback. He knows where to position himself, and Alsop has landed it on Gray's foot from 70 yards. That contrast, I think, was what I'm getting at when I ask you the question. I think you're right. Well, you are right. That's what will happen. Beadle will come back in for the league games.
It's Premier League distribution, though, isn't it, Brian? It's remarkable the way he does it. He is the best, champion outside the Premier League. He is the best goalkeeper I've seen with the ball at his feet. It is a real USP for him. I just, as I'm kind of alluded to earlier, I don't think it's enough of a strength for Chris Davies to overlook what Beadle has been doing with his hands this season. I think Beadle has improved as he's gone on. I know he's taken some stick from fans, and I know before Christmas there was a little run where he was probably culpable for a few goals. But I think back to Southampton away, QPR away, the late winner they had there. But I think Beadle has improved, and you're probably going with a higher ceiling goalkeeper if you stick with Beadle. Yeah,
indeed. Jonanthan Panzo overall, has he done enough to retain his place in the starting line? Because we do know Chris Davies loves a left-sided or left-footed left-sided centre-back. I've got to say, I was impressed with Panzo. I thought he handled Metch's one tactic for the first half an hour was basically he would sit on Panzo, wait for a lump forward, and just back into him, and Panzo just let him back into him and fall backwards onto his backside, didn't he? I thought overall Panzo had a good game, and I think when we were discussing Blues transfer window, neither of us saw much other than another body in Jonanthan Panzo. I think we saw a little bit more than that yesterday.
Yeah, I agree. We've not got kind of much championship football to go on. I think he only made 34 appearances in this league before coming to Blues. But the way he handled Metcha, the way he played out as well, I was quite impressed with how calm he was in possession. He did say that he would be, I think, in his unveiling interview.
Talk to me about Jonanthan Panzo interviews.
Let's not get into it. So yeah, I was really impressed. I think it's kind of, there's a balance, isn't there? Again, you mentioned with the goalkeepers, the balance of Alsop distribution versus Beadle his hands. There's a balance of, is the left foot of Panzo that important to the way that Blues play? Can Neumann not come back in on the right and Christoph Clara move to the left? What I would say is I think having Panzo in the team and allowing Clara to move back onto the right made him a better player. Yeah, I think Clara was always likely to turn up for that game and always likely to put in a real performance, knowing that that's the level he wants to get to and believes he can get to. I thought he was always going to turn up and play really well as he did against Newcastle last year, but he was markedly improved. I think Clara.
It was unfortunate that people will look at the Leeds goal and Clara let Metcha get away from him, didn't he? But yeah, he was absolutely excellent. The drag back on Tanaka at one point, and that was at the end of a sort of a weaving, slaloming Beckenbauer-esque run, wasn't it? And then who was it in extra time where I think it was Ampadu, wasn't it? Where they're both going to kick the ball at the same time, and Clara absolutely, he just clattered Ampadu, didn't he? It was two very committed, quite physical, very physical footballers going for the same ball, and Clara came out on top. Albeit then he produced a Beadlesque save, didn't he, to get himself a yellow card.
Brian, he fooled us both with that handball, to be fair, as well, though.
Yeah, we were at a bad angle, let's say that. But yeah, Clara did look really happy to be back in that right-sided role. Davies has clearly had his doubts about Phil Neumann this season. I think the narrative that the discussions we've had about Neumann in recent weeks is, yeah, he is trying, he is improving. He's been a bit more physical. Then against West Brom, there were wobbles again. I think this is a really, really close call. I really do, between Panzo and Neumann.
I do. I think the way I see it, I think Neumann will continue in the team.
Get one more chance.
I don't think it would take much for Chris Davies to leave Neumann out again. We've seen that a couple of times this season, especially with Jack Robinson coming back again. Hopefully at the end of this month, that throws another body into the mix. Chris Davies has two left-footed centre-backs. He has always preferred the left-footed centre-back. So I don't think it would take much for him to move Neumann out again.
You've made reference to Jack Robinson's fitness there. Let's drop in a quick fitness update, because you did ask Chris Davies about Iwata, and you spoke to him a couple of times in the last few days, haven't you, about where the injured players are? So Robinson, end of the month, did you say?
Yeah, I think Robinson and Laird. Robinson's slightly behind Laird. Laird has started team training again after a long hamstring injury. They're obviously going to give him a couple of weeks, I think, before he's even considered for selection because of how long he's been out and because of the type of injury it is with Ethan Laird. Robinson also has a hamstring injury. I think he's hopefully going to be back in training this week. So that probably, maybe a week or two, he'll be back in contention for a place on the bench. It'll be interesting to see actually whether Chris Davies plays his two centre-backs on the bench with all the attacking options he's got now as he was doing earlier in the season. Lee Buchanan started team training, which is great news because he's been out for almost 14 months and didn't play a game in 2025. I think Buchanan will only be used this season in an absolute emergency. I think Blues are very cautious that they don't want him to have a relapse because, let's face it, he hadn't been long back from a calf injury before he did his knee injury. So he's had really 18 very difficult months. So they've got Brightside Samuel, Ethan Laird, Panzo could play there. Robinson could play at left back if needs be, if Kyle Wagner can't play for whatever reason. So I don't think they'll rush Buchanan in. Tomoki Iwata and Kyogo missed the game, both with injuries. Unsure on the length. Chris Davies said they weren't or aren't serious problems. Pushed him a little bit on Iwata, and he has been managing a couple of issues, he says, over the last few weeks since Christmas. Iwata has played pretty much all the minutes this season, hasn't he? I think West Brom was the first game where Iwata has been available for a league game and hasn't started. So, and he had that bang on the hip at Oxford a couple of weeks ago that is apparently one of the issues that he is managing. So hopefully they can kind of, if they felt like Iwata was rested more than anything else against Leeds, it felt like they just didn't want to put him in the position where maybe he could get injured. And obviously with Peck out injured at the moment, you need Iwata as a midfield option, don't you, as well? So he becomes even more important. Peck will see a specialist this week on his shoulder, which is a very interesting one. And we kind of, chucked it around between us yesterday because Peck's obviously got the World Cup in the summer with South Korea. And there's going to be a balance there, isn't there? Because these shoulder injuries usually do require some form of surgery. So obviously, you want him to get to the end of the season before he has that. But obviously, he won't want to have that before the World Cup because he'll want to play in the World Cup for Korea. So he's going to see a specialist this week and they're going to decide the best course of action for Peck. I think that's it, isn't it, Brian?
I think so. Just to say, we sort of bumped into Iwata, didn't we, outside one of the lounges in the main stand, and it, as much as you can tell by someone buried in a bit underneath a big coat, he looked okay, didn't he? Wasn't on crutches or anything like that. Yeah. So hopefully, as you say, it is just a case of resting. Let's come on to poor Kanya Fujimoto. It's the first extensive minutes we've seen in a meaningful game with respect to. Did he play against Port Vale? He did, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, with respect to Port Vale, it could have been so different.
Chris Davies only thought he was getting 8 minutes because they were 1-0 down at the time. There was obviously the big chance, wasn't there, when the ball Osman's hit the post and it's fell to him maybe on the penalty spot 10, 12 yards out, whatever. And the goal's there, but there are a lot of bodies in the way, aren't there? I watched it back again earlier, and there are a lot of bodies in the way, and he's hit Beal in front of him. Maybe if he'd put it to one side, who knows? The goalkeeper was kind of out of the equation because he was
doing the right thing. The goalkeeper was flying across the goal to his right, and he went back to Fujimoto's right, and Fujimoto went back left, which is the right thing to do.
And I don't think we're blaming Kanya Fujimoto, are we? We're not saying he should definitely have scored.
No, we're not. We're not. He should have scored. We're not. No.
Chris Davies will definitely leave him out in Norwich this weekend now.
That's a hot take.
No, we're not blaming him. I thought actually, he, for a player who's played probably not even 90 minutes in 6 months or whatever, or maybe 9 months going back to the end of last season when he was at Gil Vicente. I don't think he did terribly. What I was impressed by him was the way he recognised passes and intercepted passes and got his body in the way and picked off Leeds balls forward. I thought that was quite impressive. the way he used the ball, maybe not so much, but, he's entitled to be rusty given his lack of football. I think there was one towards the end where he did brilliantly to intercept a pass from a Leeds attack, and then immediately gave it away, and Blues were in trouble again. I think that might have led to a chance towards the end. But yeah, I mean, we weren't expecting brilliance from Fujimoto on his limited football, but he so nearly was the hero of Blues at the end.
We've been robbed of a great storyline, haven't we? Yeah, which is what I'm most sore about. Yeah, there was a double interception near the halfway line, which had he not made, Leeds would have been in like 3-on-2 or 4-on-3 or something like that. So that was important. But then, similarly, as you made reference, he tried to dribble out of his own area and gave it away. And there was one clearance as well, which went back towards his own goal as well. So a mixed bag. But the real story of Fujimoto's day is the question of what might have been. I mean, that would have made it an incredible, one of the most memorable occasions at St Andrews in many a year. It was a good occasion anyway, wasn't it? The atmosphere, with the pre-match stuff for Tom Wagner, it felt like a big occasion, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It felt very similar to the Newcastle game. And Blues have now faced 3 Premier League teams over the last 2 seasons under Chris Davies and ran all 3 of them really close. This time, the closest. This is the best Blues team of those 3 games, though. Let's face that as well. Yeah. I thought it was an exceptional occasion, as we knew it would be, with 28,000 plus in the house. Leeds fans, to be fair to them, made a racket as well, but they just couldn't get over the line. It would have been so sweet had Blues won it at the end, because I think they deserved to win on the balance of play. I thought Blues were the better team. They had the better chances. They had more possession and what have you. It's just a shame they couldn't win. And you always feel when it gets to a penalty shootout that the Premier League quality will shine through. And I think it did. I was listening to actually Sean Longstaff talk about his winning penalty and saying it's the least pressurised penalty in football, isn't it? When you're 3-2 up and you've got the chance to win it in a penalty shootout, because someone else has got the chance to win it if you miss. So they look like players in that penalty shootout that are playing without nerves, particularly as they won the toss to have it their end as well. So fair play to them for coming through it. But I thought the day as a whole was really good, and it should set Blues up for a promising end to the season.
Which brings us on to that end of the season. While Blues were playing in the FA Cup, the Championship was sort of rolling on a little bit. Derby County moved into the top 6. They beat Swansea 2-0 at home. They are now, let me check the league table, 2 points above Blues. However, that could all change on Tuesday. Wrexham go to Bristol City. And if Wrexham win at Bristol City, they'll go back into the top 6 with 50 points, 4 points ahead of Blues. Just about clinging on. 14 games to go. Blues have played a game more than several of the other contenders, Wrexham, Bristol City. Obviously, that'll be levelled up. Hull City as well. It's just about clinging onto the coattails at the moment, isn't it? That draw against West Brom feels a little bit expensive now.
Yeah, we knew Blues a few games ago would have to go on an exceptional run to finish in the top 6, didn't we? And I feel like it is still really just 6th up for grabs, because the other teams have pulled away a little bit, as far as Blues are concerned anyway.
And it wasn't a West Brom result, not in that situation because of the West Brom result, are they? Let's be clear about that. But it did feel like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it did. And the West Brom game probably puts a little bit of pressure on the next 2 away games. Or the next 3, if you think of Middlesbrough coming up when Blues are coming to St Andrews as well, I think the week after. So the next 3 games, not Forest, Norwich away, Millwall away, and Borough at home. You're probably looking at 5 or 6 points from that you would really want. And Norwich is the form team in the league at the moment, having won 7 of the last 8, albeit 2 of those were in the FA Cup. Millwall are absolutely flying, have one of the best home records in the league. And Middlesbrough, goes without saying, they're top of the league and are on a ridiculous run of form. So they're 3 really hard games, 3 games you probably wouldn't want at this moment in time. But the Blues have got to play them at some stage. So 5 or 6 points, 6 points would be the dream, I think. Well, 9 points would be the dream, but 6 points would be a really, really good return. 5 points would be acceptable. I think you're struggling if you get 4 or 3, I think, because in that time there's so many teams that are in the mix at the moment with Blues that somebody will have put 2 or 3 wins together.
It feels like, obviously, Blues play Borough at home on March the 2nd. It feels like after these 3 games, we potentially could be able to just call it, couldn't we? If they're not in touch, albeit still with 11 games to go and 33 points to play for. But the congestion is getting worse. The gap could be 4 points. Clear blue water plus a point to Wrexham if they win on Tuesday night. The time is now, and if you're going to reach the playoffs, ultimately you're going to have to beat other teams that are either in or going for the playoffs. Yeah,
and if Blues are on 46 at the moment and they've got 14 games to play, I think they're going to need maybe a minimum of 26, which takes them to 72. Which isn't inconceivable because 2 points a game, is pretty standard for teams going for automatics, but they're going to need to be in automatic promotion form almost, I think.
Well, they've been rolling along at 2 points a game, haven't they, until the Albion game?
Well, yeah, they've taken the last 6 league games. Have they won 4, drawn 2? I might have imagined that. I think they have. They've won 4, drawn 2 the last.
Yeah, beat Coventry, beat Wednesday, beat Oxford, beat Leicester. Drawn with Swansea, Stoke, and Albion. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 and 3. So 1, 4, drawn 3 of the last 7, including Coventry. So yeah, I mean they are in that type of form. They've got to just maintain it now. They've got the players. I think they've got a very, very good squad now. We've said that. It's just whether they've given themselves too much to do this season. I'd like to think they haven't, because I would love them to extend the season by another 2 or 3 weeks and get in the playoffs. That'd be fantastic. From a selfish point of view as well, because I hate the May when you've gone and got nothing to do for the first, from May 4th onwards. So it'd be brilliant to have a playoff run, and hopefully, another day out at Wembley. That would be absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it's got to be automatic promotion form from here, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, let's consign the Leeds sideshow to the history books. Alex, thanks very much for joining us. Off to Norwich with you this weekend for some Delia Smith banana cake. Hopefully you won't get Jonanthan Panzo to interview post-match. Just to touch on that, I did him for 3 minutes, and probably 2 minutes and 30 seconds with me asking questions. So very friendly guy.
He seems a lovely guy.
And very skilled at keeping his answers very, very brief. So thanks for that to the club for putting Jonathan up, and thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for listening. Keep right on from both of us.